Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm excited. I've got an awesome hardware wallet solution, Kivo, which is a company that I've been following for a while, and I'm actually just about to get my own in the mail, which I'm very excited about. So today I've got Henry Vogel, the co-founder and CEO. So Henry, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Leah. Great to see you and great to be on.
So I always like to kick off my interviews with just getting a really high level overview of what it is you guys are building. I know that you guys have been, in process building for a while now. So go ahead and just give us a high level overview of what Kivo is, and then we can dive into it from there.
Sure, great. So we set out with this mission a couple of years ago now. It started really as a passion project. A bunch of us being in the crypto space and blockchain more specifically, really felt like and set out a mission to create a next gen crypto wallet that would really be worthy of managing your digital identity. And what we saw in terms of the solutions, and we still think are ripe for innovation and disruption today, are this forced compromise between, on the one hand, custodian solutions or hot wallet solutions, which force you to entrust a third party, another, in many cases, centralized solutions with your identity, your privacy, and your security in exchange for some simplicity, some ease of use. And then these hardware wallets, which were more decentralized self-custody type solutions, but where you had to sacrifice a ton of convenience, the usability really poor, and frankly, the security is not that safe with seed phrases that we'll get into. So Kivo is this next gen crypto wallet that we've built that is starting with a custom hardware wallet, but it's really intended to be uber safe and ultra simple. And that's really the key. It's not an either or. We want to break that compromise and deliver something that enables you to be your own bank, to self-custody your crypto, and rest assured and have the peace of mind that it's going to be safe and secure with a lot of elements in which we'll go into, but also be something that's easy to use and simple, because that's what mass adoption and what the industry really needs is this ability to have a much better ability to kind of manage and be your own bank.
No, absolutely. And I'm really excited to dive into a little bit more the tech specs on what you guys are building, because I do think that that's one of the biggest, at least for me, things I think about if I'm going to entrust, a hardware wallet with my funds is feeling really confident in its security. So can you kind of walk us through the tech, the security, and how you guys have set the whole thing up?
Absolutely. Let me start by saying why we think that there's so much room for innovation with the existing solutions, and not to take anything away from the advances that have been made, but I'm sure you're familiar with sort of Nano or Trezor, one of the first. The issue with most self-custody kind of decentralized solutions is that and especially hardware, they require a recovery mechanism, a backup or a restore feature. And what has been an advancement, certainly with hierarchical deterministic kind of wallets, is the notion of a seed phrase, which essentially takes that hexadecimal kind of private master key and converts it into 12, typically now 24 random words, as you know, in a specific order. We saw that, and first and foremost, when you just Google it, look at the YouTube videos, and we saw it as a huge pain point and a huge friction. I mean, having to supposedly have all the security in this device, and then have to have a piece of paper, a recovery card that you have to keep safe and know where it is. Or, we saw these various solutions. This is a product that's sold for $50 as an accessory with another one of the hardware wallets out there. And they're very proud of the fact that it can withstand, 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, and you have to put a padlock on it. We thought that's insane. That's incredibly not only inconvenient and a hassle, but it's really anxiety provoking to say, where, am I keeping that seed phrase? But worse yet, it's insanely insecure, because anybody that gets access to that just knows what the seed phrase is can restore your private key and can transfer your crypto. And once it's gone, as you know, I mean, that's inherent in the ethos of the blockchain decentralized ledger, is that it is private and gone forever, very hard to get back. So that premise we set out at a fundamental level to try and fix with Kivo. And to dive into it a little bit, what we built and the system, we call it multi-factor, multi-sig authentication. It's a mouthful, but it basically, if I unpack it, has a couple of really key components that break that compromise between security and simplicity. The first is multi-factor. Probably familiar with kind of 2FA,
Right.
two-factor solutions with SMS codes, not that safe, but we actually have 4 factors. It's a 4-factor authentication. And it's built on, I don't know if you're familiar with Adi Shamir, the name Adi Shamir. He's are you familiar with RSA tokens? They're what most of the, 6-digit 2FA kind of SMS codes. If you recall back in the day, there were hardware tokens that a bunch of banks gave with RSA. He's the S in RSA. There are 3 kind of cryptographers, mathematicians. And Adi Shamir created an algorithm now about 25 years ago. It was actually built on the Lagrange polynomial, but it's called this Shamir secret sharing algorithm. And that's the fundamental premise of our multi-factor that I'll describe, which is any private master key, any point on an elliptical curve can effectively be broken down and divided into what are called key shares, sub keys. And you can the algorithm enables you to have any certain number, K, out of the total number of key shares, find that point on the elliptical curve. So sorry for going into that depth, but our 4FA technology basically works in the same way, where any 3 of the 4 factors will actually restore and create your private key. And let me just describe them quickly for Kivo. So the first factor, we actually put on the device itself. It's something you have. It's quite common. We actually have built a dual chip custom PCB that is our own, which has one of the chips is a secure element. It's an Infineon Optega Trust P, EAL 5+ certified, super secure. It's what banks and credit cards and chips are using. Has all these anti-tampering sort of built into the chip itself. We birth the private master key, and we never store it in memory after we birth it. We break it down into these 4 key shares. And one of those key shares is on the Kivo device itself, on that secure MCU. The second factor is a password, a strong password that you can enter. And unlike most other hardware wallets out there, we have a color 2.8-inch capacitive touch LCD. So you can enter up to 24 characters, letters, numbers, symbols, it's a strong password. It's not like the other hardware wallets where you have to just enter a 9-digit PIN. You can create a strong password. It's something you know. The third factor is actually quite unique to us. We're one of the only hardware wallets that we basically built in a world-class biometric sensor, a fingerprint sensor in the device itself. And we've done a lot of work actually storing and encrypting not just that factor, sort of what's called a Boolean, yes, no, true, false. We actually have what's called the vector file of the fingerprint with all the different ridges and high points. That's encrypted that's your third factor, the key share, which is encrypted with your fingerprint. And the fourth factor, and this is really kind of then unique to Kivo as well, we call it a carbon key. It's like a carbon copy back in the day. It's basically another custom-built hardware device. Nothing's 100% secure, Leah, but we went to the extra element to have custom interface pogo pins that connect to the Kivo. We store the fourth factor encrypted factor on this carbon key, and we actually store the encrypted hashes of your fingerprint and your password as well. So the way to think about it is you've got something that you have, your wallet, something your password, something that's unique to you, which is your fingerprint, and then something you can store separately. And we'll come back to that, but you can put this in your safe. And with that understanding now that any 3 of those factors will restore your private key. And so even though there's all this complexity in the technology, it's really simple to use, because if you want to send or receive a transaction, all you need is your Kivo, your password, and your fingerprint. 3 out of 4, you can now sign. We restore the private master key. We sign the transaction on the device. We can then transmit it through our downloadable app that goes to the blockchain. But here's where it gets really interesting, which is if you lose your Kivo,
those are one of my questions.
Or if it gets stolen, God forbid, the real issue here is your security and safety. The first thing is that even if somebody were to get a hold of your Kivo, they still need your fingerprint and your password. There's 3 layers of security there. They still need that. But you, on the other hand, to restore your private master key, you don't have to go find your seed phrase and deal with entering that in with two. You just get your carbon key. You connect your carbon key to a replacement Kivo. Remember, there's that fourth factor plus the hashes. You enter your fingerprint and your password. You can restore your private key. It takes 15 seconds.
Got it.
It's simple. It's secure. Anybody that gets access to your carbon key can't do anything with it either. They need your fingerprint and your password. So that four-factor authentication with the multi-factor sort of Shamir secret sharing really is a breakthrough, we think, in simplicity and ease, but safety, because you can do it without a paper recovery card, without a seed phrase.
Oh, that's so cool getting that walkthrough of all that, because, and I'm glad you brought up that, having these paper backups is not exactly secure. It's not the best plan, to be honest. So
we just thought, we just look at these stories of people who've lost them, who couldn't get their password. They're down to their 10th try. They didn't know where the seed phrase was, or other people have gotten the seed phrase. It's a huge problem in the industry. Roughly 150 to 250 varies based on the what the market cap is of Bitcoin alone has been inactive for many, many years. And it's uncertain whether that's because people, Satoshi Nakamoto, him, her, them, they, inactive for 11 plus years. And actually is the second piece of the differentiation, what we've been innovating around, which is the Multi-Sig, which is that today, we don't know if those hacks, those inactive kind of addresses have been people that have taken their keys to their grave, or they're people that have forgotten their passwords, or they're just people that are hodling and not using them. And that's a big problem as well, which is, and we solve that with a native Multi-Sig. So I don't know, today, have you thought about and planned for what might happen if you had a hardware wallet or a software wallet for that matter? What would happen if you died? And it's a topic most people don't want to talk about, but unfortunately it's true. It's one of those few things, we're all going to die at some point. It's just it's a question of when, not if, hopefully in many years. But there's no solution today that lets you transfer your crypto, your private master keys, your identity to somebody else, to a beneficiary, after you die, without first having to share your private information with some other human being. You have to, if it's a ledger or a Trezor or another hardware wallet, you have to give that other person instructions to your credentials, your password, and your username, or your seed phrase, or your private master key. And we've solved that with Multi-Sig. And so in addition to that 4FA that I was describing, we let you, as part of our solution, sign up for a trustless inheritance, truly trustless inheritance service, where you can name, and I'll speak in the first person. I named my wife Maria. And I'm so confident in our security that I can share that. And Maria and I have my Kivo, but Maria has her password and her fingerprint. She's been set up in our service. It's optional. It's a service that we provide. But we actually enabled a beneficiary, in my case, my wife, to create her private master key that is actually encrypted. Her factors are encrypted on my carbon key. And we'll store this carbon key for our users as part of this service in a secure vault. Actually, we have a partnership with Iron Mountain, and we'll secure this in a geodispersed enterprise-grade vault that will basically, when the time comes, again, sadly, that I die, my wife can authenticate that I've died just like she will with, JP Morgan Chase or E-Trade with a death certificate. Again, we or Iron Mountain or anybody else, nobody can do anything with this carbon key. But once we validate the owner's death, we send this to the beneficiary. She can, on either my Kivo or a replacement Kivo, she can enter again her password and her fingerprint that, if you recall, were stored on that. She can create her signature. But now, since it's not me, it's not the owner, we have a 2 out of 3 signatures required. And one of those signatures has to be Kivo. So we co-sign, having validated the owner's death, along with the beneficiary, and they can recreate and restore the private master key without ever having, I have never had to share my password, my seed phrase, my credentials with any other human being.
No, that's so cool. And that's an area that I think really needs a lot more attention in the industry, because it's true. Like, do you trust another human being with your private keys? Even if you trust them as a human being, do you trust their ability to not lose it or not accidentally, do something with it? And so that's really cool that you guys have, like, the way that you've set up the entire ecosystem to make it both secure, but then also really easy. Because, I mean, let's face it, if someone has just recently passed, you're dealing with a lot on all levels of, paperwork and grief and like all of the things. And so to have that piece of things, to feel confident in how that works, that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, and
so
the peace of mind, I just lost my mom, in fact, a couple of months ago. So I'm actually kind of dealing with this. And to your point, our vision, in fact, goes well beyond just the Bitcoin or ETH that you're holding, the cryptocurrencies. It's really, this is about your digital identity and being able to store safely and securely, but also simply, lots of types of digital assets. And so our plan, our hope is that this will be a way you could store, having gone through all that paperwork you're just describing of bank accounts and land deeds and loans and wills and all sorts of other kind of documents that are still stuck literally in the 19th century. I mean, we are stuck notarizing things with wet signatures and logbooks in a notary public's office where you put your fingerprint in a logbook. We're like, hello, we need to come to a better solution that we hope actually is going to be Kivo as a way to manage really your digital identity for all sorts of types of digital assets, crypto assets.
So one thing I just want to quickly just kind of like mention to those watching, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I'm good, I already have a hardware wallet. My kind of personal approach and thought process on that, maybe you can speak to this as well, is diversification, right? And so if you have all of your crypto on one ledger, and let's say you fall for some sort of phishing scam, that's a big risk, really, to have everything in one spot, even if it is self-custody and you do have, secure storage of your keys and all of these things. You can go to all of those lengths, but I personally think it's smart to have multiple different brands of a hardware wallet. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I think that's an important point for people to consider.
Yeah, I would just build on that and say, I think this maximalism that's kind of grown in the community, and I've been part of the community for not as long as many, but 4 or 5 plus years, and the notion of it's like one way or the highway, it's my way or this is the only way, and everything, and even as a digital wallet that we hope will build trust and because of the innovation and the simplicity and the safety should be something that would hold your, like I said, your digital identity and multiple assets. Right. I don't think it's a case where it should be either or and just one thing. I mean, think about checking and savings accounts as an analogy, or credit cards and or ATM machines. Like that kind of payment solution is to give you the ability to have things like easily accessible that are small kind of sums that you want to be able to have ultra uber convenience. On the other hand, your precious assets that you're holding and investing in, you might want to have a safety deposit box or a safe or a vault or just to think about all the DeFi applications now where you actually want to get yield. Right. So there are multiple use cases and there are multiple, I think, solutions that are better suited for those. Specifically to answer your question though about hardware wallets in general, I think I'd be a believer that you should certainly feel, entrusted to have everything on Kivo, but that shouldn't mean that that's like your only solution. If you want to actually truly diversify, because we get the question asked a lot, which is true of any company, I suppose, what happens if you go out of business? And like any good entrepreneur, of course, we're really super confident in our success and longevity and solvency. And but that said, I understand the question. Certainly, of course, nothing is putting your private master keys, your digital identity, your assets at risk. Because if we were to go out of business, you can transfer those assets. Frankly, we make it really easy, still secure, for you to do that. Unlike most other wallets, you can actually see your seed phrase on Kivo. You authenticate yourself with your fingerprint and your password, and you can on the device see the seed phrase. We don't recommend it. We don't recommend certainly you write it down for all the reasons we talked about. But you can transfer your crypto. You can transfer your identity. But it's a good idea as well to have multiple diversification, like you said.
So I know we're coming up on our time, but I just wanted to chat a little bit more about something you mentioned a moment ago about the digital identity. Is there anything you can share on kind of your long-term goal for where you see that developing and what Kivo might look like in terms of a tool for people to use in the future?
Yeah, thank you. That is kind of our roadmap and our vision. And I would say there's three kind of vectors, three paths that we're pursuing in parallel that really to build out this digital identity platform, which is Kivo. And the first is just added digital assets. So it's not just about, and we started with just Bitcoin and the Bitcoin family of crypto. We've added ETH and now ERC20 tokens, and we're adding XRP, we're adding Cardano, we're adding Solana, we're adding multiple coins. And I know that there's lots of interest amongst our community. So if you're watching, if you're interested in any additional altcoins, you can go to kivowallet.com and you can kind of cast your vote. You can see the thousands of tokens and coins we have, but one is just digital assets. And, look, we're pretty excited about not just self-sovereign digital currencies like I reeled off, but NFTs as tokens and the tokenization of all sorts of other digital assets and frankly, physical assets too. So art, of course, and music and pictures and tickets, but increasingly it could be certificates, diplomas, medical records, contracts. We think this notion of digital assets is one really important vector. A second kind of theme and really kind of on our horizon is, and our technology is really extensible in this matter, is around other types of hardware and other types of trust. You don't just we started with Kivo as a closed custom solution because we wanted to prove out this four-factor, multi-factor authentication, Multi-Sig. But we call it bring your own device. I guess it's a term in the industry, but we want those factors that you could store, not just have to be on one of our Kivos, but it could be on a YubiKey or a Titan. It could be on your laptop. My kids, who are big fans of Harry Potter, talk about it. It's like the Horcruxes, Dad. You can put your digital identity or parts of your characters on other devices. And so we envision a world in the near future where you can actually have backups be in multiple devices, and not necessarily, if you choose not to want to have a secure MCU and the Kivo kind of vault decentralized largely air gap solution, you can put key shares in other and factors in other computers. And then the last thing I'll say is, and maybe it kind of comes back to my heritage, but we've talked a lot about consumers and users as individuals being their own bank and having self-custody and getting the freedom. Really, we're coming up on Independence Day here in the US, and without being too highfalutin, I think what blockchain is doing is making the world so much freer to be able to be your own custodian, to take your own assets, your own liberty, your own identity in your own hands. But there are lots of other enterprise solutions that we think also can benefit from, like multi-factor, Multi-Sig that we built out. You think about the institutional traders and the high velocity trading that's happening today. If you hit certain tripwires on velocity or on the trading, volume or the amounts, they go into this manual review authentication process.
Right.
So we're thinking there's a solution where enterprises, I talked about the beneficiary solution where it's the owner and Kivo, or the beneficiary and think about like a company, Tesla or others, that is going to take big payments or make big payments. It might require 3 out of 5 signatures, one of whom is Elon or one is the CFO. So lots of different vectors and exciting. Right.
Lots of potential. Well, Henry, thank you so much for taking the time to come join me here on the show and just really break down everything you guys are building at Kivo. I really hope that this conversation maybe sparked people to think a little bit deeper about their own security and how they're approaching that, because it's easy to be like, oh, I should figure that out one day, until the day that you really need it and wish you had. So I hope that's something people take to heart. And so if someone's watching this and they want to check out Kivo and maybe order one, check you guys out online, where's the best place for them to go next?
We're just on our own site. We are trying to keep up with demand. I mentioned earlier, we've been growing, 100% month to month. We have ramped production finally. And so come to kivowallet.com. And you can order there, and you can sign up for one of two different devices. We still have some what we call Founders Edition, limited number with a display case available. But really, hopefully in the near future, you'll be able to get it at Amazon and other places as well.
Very exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Henry. And I will leave those links below, so if anyone's watching this, you can quickly just click through. But thank you again so much for your time and for coming on the show.
Thanks, Leah. Super pleased to be here. Appreciated the conversation. Really enjoyed it. And looking forward to comments and any other kind of engagement. Any questions, we can take it offline. But happy to engage, and really excited to see what you think once you get your Kivo hopefully unboxed here really soon.